Okay, so this is just a short introduction to the kind of rationale and the aims of the TIER2 project, a new €2 million EC project to investigate reproducibility across all different types of research. So the first question is always, what is reproducibility? And in the project, we're defining it really broadly, for now at least, as a cornerstone. I mean, it is a cornerstone of at least scientific inquiry amongst all the different types of research methods. Kind of the scientific method of experimentation based on hypotheses really does rely on being able to reproduce findings. But the definitions of what reproducibility is, they vary a lot. A lot of people use the same words for different things. So what some people call replication, other people call reproducibility and or reproduction, and vice versa. But also there are various taxonomies for the different elements of research that can be made reproducible or replicable, whether it's just computational reproducibility or so. But for now, at its highest level, we just mean that if you repeat experiments or analyses of other scholars, that you get consistent results. So very broad definition for now. And why? So we know that the reliability of findings really are in question. A lot of work on rates of reproducibility, increasingly across disciplines, but the conversation started very much in medicine and psychology. And we know that there are lots and lots of issues that lead to this. We also know that there are new ways of doing research. And so the whole open science agenda, to some extent, is just there are new potentials to reshape scholarly communication and research processes just based on the new digital technologies, which we've had for a long time now, and kind of get used to the change, but just how fundamentally they reshape the possibilities of communication and investigation in science shouldn't be, we should never forget this. So the causes of poor reproducibility, lack of transparency and poor reporting, especially of methods, lack of sharing of data and code, the fact that there's a lack of reproduction or replication studies. And one reason for that is that there's publication bias. So it's difficult to publish those types of studies, but publication bias also towards reporting of positive results. At the moment, researchers are kind of incentivized to dig into their data to find a positive result rather than negative or null results, which are less easy to publish. And all this is based sometimes on questionable research practices. And here we don't only mean outright fraud and bad people, we mean good people within bad systems who sometimes are enticed to act in ways which aren't always for the benefits of science itself. And so, especially over the last 10 years, there's been tons of new and really exciting research and tools and practices to improve levels of reproducibility. But if we take stock of everything that's happened, there is much broader potential. And so as part of the rationale for the project, I'll just introduce like 5 strategic priorities for where we go in improving reproducibility. So the first is that reproducibility, the conversation about reproducibility really presents us with an opportunity. We should frame it as a reform of the scientific system and frame it as all the opportunities which go along with that, and not as a crisis, which is how we kind of started this conversation heavily. The crisis narrative, I think, was useful in attracting attention, getting the interest, especially of funders and others and institutions. But this survey is still really heavily cited from 2016 from Nature. It wasn't a great survey. Lots of issues about who answered and skewed toward disciplines, but it showed that 90% thought that there was at least a slight crisis in reproducibility. We did some work for the EC last year, which showed that actually the researchers we studied said much less. I think it was like 50 or so thought that there was maybe a slight crisis, and we don't know what a slight crisis really means. It means a bit of a problem, maybe. Okay, so let's not talk about a crisis. Let's talk about opportunity. And so This is from a paper by Marcus Manafo and colleagues from the UK Reproducibility Network. That it's more constructive in our view to frame reproducibility as an opportunity and to reflect on which aspects of relevant working practices continue to be effective, what can be improved, and which new ways of working can be introduced to the research ecosystem. So I really, really agree with this, but I would add maybe a caveat to it, which is where we talk about what's working, what can be improved, we can't treat the research system as a unity. We have to center what we call epistemic diversity within our understanding of reproducibility. So the discussion on reproducibility, as we said, has been led in large extent by specific disciplines like medicine and psychology, which are quite structured in the way that they run experiments, quite similar in the way that they rely on inferential statistics, and this means that they have a basket of problems, but these research disciplines are only a narrow slice of the whole research spectrum if we go across all different types of research. And maybe the issues which are particular or which come from these specific disciplines don't apply in other areas, but because the conversation has kind of been led by these areas, then maybe our understanding of reproducibility is shaped by this specific viewpoint. So Sabina Leonelli, philosopher at Oxford, has this great paper which says that reproducibility for data-intensive research comes in a variety of forms geared to specific features of the research environment. So things like how much control you can exert over the conditions of the research. If you're doing experiments in the computer, for example, you very, very high degrees of control. If you're doing sociological research or so, the much lesser degrees to which you can control. How much we rely on statistics and inference and all the degrees of freedom which go into kind of what your parameters are for what counts in statistics, the precision to which you can state your research goals, and the dependence on a researcher's judgment. But this is reproducibility for data-intensive research. So what of non-data intensive research? Maybe this is a whole other basket of problems. And this is kind of an open question, which maybe we can contribute towards answering. But it's not only the type of research, there's also a lot of other conditions which shape reproducibility. So this is a paper it's about open science and sources of epistemic diversity from Sabina. And it talks about differences in materials and concepts, methods, but it also talks about the capacity in the research environment. So infrastructural elements, the degree to which these differ over context of funding, of infrastructures, sociocultural elements, so different types of research assessment, which we know prompt people to behave in different ways, different types of legal and ethical systems, the role of language, characteristics and demographics of researchers themselves, and institutional factors. And we can expect the causes and consequences of reproducibility to vary across all these different elements. So the third thing is that we should systematize the evidence for informed policy across different contexts. There's lots and lots of evidence coming up at the moment. Very often it's from specific disciplines looking internally to their discipline. What can we learn across about the commonalities, the generalities from all this different research and the specificities towards different disciplines? As I've said, much of the debate still comes from a relatively narrow slice of the research spectrum. We need to acknowledge epistemic diversity and try to systematize what evidence already exists to be able to structure what we think is best in terms of reproducibility in specific contexts, where we can work together across disciplines because there are these generalities and there are shared problems, and where specific disciplines need their own solutions. So the fourth is that we need to work together to boost capacity at all levels. We need to treat reproducibility as a full stack problem, not piecemeal. We need to acknowledge that from building the evidence base to making the infrastructures and tools available, to equipping people with skills, to building communities and norms, towards reforming research assessment and putting policies in place. These are all part of the same solution, and we need to join up all these elements. We need to join up the communities who are working on all of these different elements. So, for example, especially the growing network of networks, so the network of reproducibility networks in each country, we need to definitely grow this. It's really impressive the speed at which they've developed. But we need to increase not only the number of reproducibility networks in different countries, but maybe also the membership of them. So sometimes their memberships does still reflect this medicine psychology element. How can we broaden? And part of this is going back, finding the commonalities of reproducibility, how we come together in a common conversation amongst all different types of research to come to common solutions where possible, or specific solutions where necessary. And as well as the reproducibility networks, we also need to build on open infrastructures. And here in particular, it seems a bit of a missed opportunity at the moment with the amount of work that's being done into the European Open Science Cloud, which is very often focused on fair data, which is heavily related to reproducibility, of course, but the conversation there doesn't seem to be fully linked up to the reproducibility debate. And given the investments, this seems to me like a no-brainer. And so one of the elements we want to do is join up these conversations and communities, and we have the people within our consortium to do that. And so, for example, also the assessment of the reform of research assessment is a big priority at the moment. COARA has just been formed, and how can we link this to the conversations about reproducibility as well? So the fifth thing, and this builds on work that me and my team have done in a previous project on merit, is that we need to emphasize inclusion to minimize unintended consequences and maximize equitable transition. So we need to acknowledge, we think we're doing good. We're working to reform, and we're doing that because we think we're improving. But we're not, I mean, I think we're smart, but even with all the best will in the world, there will always be unintended consequences, and we need to be proactive in looking for them. We need to look where there's trade-offs. We want this and we want this, but we can't have both, and which is more important. And so a lot more reflection on this needs to happen, especially special attention on the way that variance in epistemic diversity alters what's desirable in terms of reproducibility. And respect differences in levels of advancement in dealing with these issues across these contexts. Very often it's the kind of global north actors who march ahead with the reform year to year, and then the other kind of more peripheral actors are left kind of struggling to catch up with previous agendas when suddenly there's a new area which is now kind of the state of the art for research. And we need to try to mitigate all these things, reflect this diversity, and especially to do that, we need to harness openness of infrastructures, tools, services, and training to move as a global community. And here, these are the recommendations from the On Merit project, which give this rationale. So, how to account for all this and operationalize all these factors? We're going to try and do all this in Tier 2. These are all the kind of things which are motivating us in our work. So Tier 2, we want to enhance trust, integrity, and efficiency in research. So we'll look at reproducibility in the context of social, life, computer sciences, plus funder and publisher contexts. With those communities, we will co-create new tools and practices. We will test them out and see if they work and publish the results to share with the community. We're 10 partners plus affiliated partners like F1000, and we have €2 million to do this in 3 years. These are the methodological steps that we'll follow. So first, we'll conceptualize the project, What does epistemic diversity mean across different concepts? What's the evidence? What tools and practices are there? We'll work with communities to design new interventions, starting with this future studies element to kind of look into the future. What kind of reproducibility future do we want, and work backwards from there. We will co-create pilots and develop an assessment framework which allows us to actually say whether these things worked or not, and to which extent. Then we'll implement those things with researchers, publishers, funders. We'll assess whether they work. And based on the outcomes, we'll produce recommendations and reflections for the community, including this self-reflection on our own processes within the project. We want to be maximally reproducible within the project and within our resources. And we'll reflect on those, on the issues there. This is the structure of the project. So the structure of the project is we have a work package for management, and then embedded in that is the second work package, which works on co-creation, engagement with stakeholders, and dissemination. Then work package 3 develops the concept, maps the evidence, scopes the tools, and then at the end of the project also develops the roadmap for the future and our recommendations. Within work package 4, we'll do the development work. We'll work with communities to see which tools, new tools or interventions might be helpful in their different contexts. We'll design them. And this work package will also be responsible for overseeing the piloting and assessment of those. And then in work package 5, this is about the development of the tools and practices for researchers, for publishers, for funders across the different contexts. And finally, these are some of the tools which we have in mind to create. The project is heavily co-creative, so this is a provisional list of suggestions, and we'll work with communities to either refine these or find other potential innovations. But we want to produce a reproducibility hub, including checklists. We want to develop the concept of the data management plan further to become more of a reproducibility management plan, so planning in advance for the reproducibility of a whole project. We want to produce new workflow tools for reproducible research in life sciences, computer sciences, and social sciences, new workflows for review of data and code, publishers, standards for decoupled or threaded publications, new planning instruments for funders, for reproducibility, and monitoring dashboards for funders, for publishers, maybe for researchers as well. So if you'd like to read more, we published our proposal here on the Rio Journal, hosted by Pensoft, our project partner. And also the strategic priorities are in a little editorial in PLOS Biology. Thank you.